Today we're unboxing a brand new second generation iPhone SE that's been sealed in its box for over 5 years. I found this one on eBay for a really good price. It was just under $100. And this is in the product red color. Taking a look at the packaging here, you can see a pretty decent amount of scratches. And that's actually a good sign that this is an authentic seal. There's also an inventory sticker on the side here that says this device is locked to Cricket Wireless. On the back of this box here, we do see that this is the up-level 128GB storage configuration. And here in the listed contents of the box, we do see that this model includes the earpods and the power adapter. Here on the bottom near the pull tab, we do have some pretty grimy looking tape for some reason. So I'll get that pulled off so we can open up the device. And there we go, I was able to get that removed and free up the pull tab. So let's break this seal on the iPhone SE. And the rest just pulls straight upward. So we can now lift the lid from the box. And we're met with the literature packet here on top. And after removing that, we can see our iPhone SE. Let's use this pull tab to lift it up. And there we go. I'm really glad that I picked up the product red color. So now let's get this plastic film removed. And there we go, our completely fingerprint-free iPhone SE. Let's get it connected to power now. And there we go, we do get the charging screen. So I'll set this to the side and we can take a look at the included accessories. And we'll start with the literature packet here. So we do see a unique card for the product red model here on top. And this just gives a brief overview of the product red foundation as it relates to this iPhone's purchase. We also get a quick start guide, a SIM ejection tool, some regulatory info, and 2 Apple stickers. Also in the box, we get a 5-watt USB-A power adapter. We also get a set of wired earpods here with a remote and mic. Lastly, in here, we do get the USB-A to Lightning cable. And these accessories are more significant than you would think, because this was the very last iPhone to be released that included the headphones and power adapter. The iPhone 11 lineup also included these at launch, but those were released in late 2019. And this second generation SE here was released in early 2020. Okay, and our iPhone SE has powered up. And this model should definitely be running its original software version, which is iOS 13. So let's go ahead and get it set up now. Okay, it looks like the iPhone is requesting a SIM. So since this is a Cricket wireless device, I'll get that SIM card installed. And there we go, the iPhone has now been activated. And awesome, we are met with the iOS 13 home screen. So I just disconnected the iPhone from Wi-Fi and removed the SIM card just in case it would try and do any sort of update. And I'm going to give this iPhone some time to charge up before we take a closer look at it. Okay, well I've got the iPhone SE all charged up now. So let's go ahead and see which version of iOS 13 we have. And okay, cool, it looks like we have 13.4 here. And although that is a pretty late version of iOS 13, it was actually the original version for this device, as this model was released about halfway into iOS 13's life cycle. We also get confirmation that this is the 128GB model. And as you can see, I did get my iTunes library synced to this. Also, while we're here in settings, let's take a look at the battery health. And we do see 100% as the maximum capacity. I usually get questions about this, but every brand new old stock device I've unboxed has had 100% battery health. I have experienced a few sealed iPhones recently that would not hold a charge, but those were open box listings, so they may have been opened up and charged once before. So it seems like if the device has been opened up and charged at least once, that it actually does more damage than if the device was never connected to power at all. I'm not sure about all the battery chemistry to make sense of that, but leave me a comment down below if you have a thought. Also, while we're here in settings, I want to take a look at the wallpaper selection. So I believe this model should have some unique wallpapers that were used on the boxes. So we'll look in the stills category for them. And yes, we do find them. I'm kind of surprised that there are 6 options here. I was only expecting the 3, as these top 3 were featured on the box for each color the device was offered in. So this was for the white model, this was for the black model, and lastly the product red like I have here. So the 3 extra choices I was not expecting appear to be variants of those wallpapers, just with some slightly different colors. And each of these does feature a variant for the dark mode. We'll go ahead and activate dark mode now. This is really cool because iOS 13 was the first version to have a dark mode. Here's the dark mode for the silver, the black, the product red, and here's the dark mode look for the 3 extra wallpapers. I think for my product red model here, I will definitely be using the dark mode variant of the wallpaper mint for this device. So here is a look at that. So now let's talk about what this second generation iPhone SE was. This model was announced and released in April 2020. There was no live event or even a pre-recorded video for this iPhone, as it was released at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. It was rather pretty quietly announced with a press release on Apple's website. And the second generation SE was somewhat considered to be a successor to the first generation. This first generation SE here had launched back in spring of 2016, but this model was discontinued in September 2018. So for that time period between late 2018 and early 2020, the iPhone 7 and iPhone 8 briefly served as Apple's budget model iPhone. But those models weren't really what consumers wanted, and they weren't following the iPhone SE recipe, if you will. And that iPhone SE recipe I'm referring to is having the newest iPhone chip in an older iPhone package. So the second generation iPhone SE here was basically an iPhone 11 chip in the iPhone 8 design, while the original SE here had an iPhone 6s chip in the iPhone 5s design. Bringing in the iPhone 8 here, you can see how much of the design that the SE shared with it. So they both had this rounded corner design with a glass back panel. And they both featured the 4.7-inch display with the Touch ID fingerprint sensor on the home button. And this was a really familiar design that users had grown to love. It was much more traditional than the modern iPhone X design that had launched in 2017, with the edge-to-edge display and the gesture-based navigation. And of course, there were just many users that wanted a small iPhone that was easy to hold in one hand. So that was basically what the iPhone SE was, and it was a really appealing package, especially at the time and for the price. This only cost $399 when new. That got you the 64GB model, but you could step up to 128 like I have here for an extra $50. The top end price for this SE here was $549 for the 256GB model. We would end up seeing one final iPhone SE generation in 2022. That model featured the iPhone 13 chip as well as 5G connectivity, but it did see a small price increase to $429. And we would see the iPhone SE nameplate go away in favor of the iPhone 16e in 2025. That model, though, had a pretty substantial price increase to $599. But getting back to the second generation SE here, as I mentioned, this was powered by the same chip found in the iPhone 11 lineup. So that was the A13 Bionic chip. It did have slightly less RAM for this model though. There was only 3GB here while the 11s received 4. The cameras on this model were basically the same as the iPhone 8. So you had a single 12 megapixel rear facing sensor. It was capable of recording 4K video at 60 frames per second. And it was now capable of a software based portrait mode. The front facing camera was the same 7 megapixel sensor. It could only record 1080p video, but it was also capable of portrait mode now. This iPhone SE received a design cue from the iPhone 11 with this centered Apple logo as well as the removal of the iPhone branding. You did retain this really cool product red branding though. This model was IP67 water and dust resistant, and it did feature the wireless charging through this glass back panel. This iPhone did follow in the iPhone 11's footsteps and remove the 3D touch feature from the display. The original iPhone SE did not include 3D touch either, but that really made sense as it was using the iPhone 5s display design, which never included that feature to begin with. But the iPhone 8 design this SE was based on did feature 3D touch. So it was just a little bit strange that Apple went out of their way to remove it. And one more point about the iPhone SE design is that really in its basic form it can be traced all the way back to the 2014 iPhone 6. So as you can see here, the SE is slightly thicker, does have that glass back panel, and no headphone jack. But pretty much everything else was very similar to the iPhone 6 that had been around for 6 years at the time. And now we'll turn our attention to iOS 13 on this device specifically. So the big standout feature for this version was the addition of that system-wide dark mode. It really took forever for Apple to implement that, but I guess it's one of those better late than never situations. The UI for changing your volume on this version was different. It would now appear on the side of your screen. With iOS 12 and older, this would appear in the center of your screen and block whatever content you were looking at. So this volume interface was very welcomed. And this was the first version of Apple Music to feature the real-time song lyrics. It was also the first version where you could have a custom profile on iMessage. The Maps application featured a redesign, as did the Photos application. iOS 13 also had improvements to the haptic touch feature. And this was basically Apple's answer in software to the physical removal of the 3D touch feature. So devices that didn't have the pressure-sensitive layer in the display, like the iPhone XR as well as the 11 and newer, they could still access most of the 3D touch functionality just with a software-based long press. Here in 2025, iOS 13 is somewhat usable, but it's definitely lacking in the application support department. The App Store still loads with no problem, and it will allow you to log in. But many apps that are important to users like YouTube and social media applications will no longer allow you to sign in. So that definitely would hold you back from using iOS 13. For my use on this device though, I'll probably just download some games like I have done here on my iPhone 11. I decided to sync my iTunes library to this, but you could also sign in with Apple Music. That does still work. So that pretty much concludes my look at this brand new iPhone SE that's been sealed in its box for over 5 years. This was really fun to take a look at. I think this was a great iPhone model and it was one of the best values that Apple has offered. Here in 2025, this model is still supported and it will be receiving the iOS 26 update this fall. And you can easily find these for pretty much dirt cheap on eBay. I've regularly seen them sell for around $50, which is just crazy for a device that is still fully supported by Apple. Of course, the design of this model does feel pretty dated as it's basically over 10 years old at this point. But as a collector, it feels really nostalgic. So be sure to leave me a comment below with your thoughts on this iPhone SE and get subscribed for more sealed iOS device content. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.